Welcome to the Adapt Performance Podcast, the podcast that lets you delve into the minds of world-class guests all involved in the pursuit of performance. I'm your host, Jordan Webster, and let's get into it. What's going on, guys? Hope you're all doing well. So in today's episode, we are joined by David Gray of David Gray Rehab. So if you don't know David, we're going to kind of cover that a little bit, but I think at the end of this episode, it's definitely worth going across to his social media. So he has a podcast himself, but also puts out a lot of great information on Instagram. So it's definitely worth, digging in and seeing what you can kind of learn. Some of the things we cover in today's podcast is a little bit around social media, actually, and speaking about Instagram and the metrics and his podcast and just how those things are going. And I like speaking about those stuff. I really enjoy speaking about what goes on behind the scenes. You see the post, but you don't see the hard work that goes on behind it. You don't know what kind of defines success for that person. So yeah, it was cool. It was really cool. And then we kind of get into the nitty gritty of a little bit of hamstring rehab, how you actually approach hamstring rehab from a more holistic level, a little bit more globally, not just attacking the actual tear or strain itself, actually thinking about why that happened and how we can unpick that a little bit. So yeah, I was really, really happy with how this episode turned out, and I think you guys are going to love it. I think you're going to learn some things, which is awesome. I know I definitely learned a lot in this episode, coming from more of an S&C coach background. We're not exposed to rehab courses and kind of taking somebody through that full return to play process all that often. So being able to kind of surround yourself with people that have the thing that you don't have is great. It's one of those things. Strength coaches are good at strength, and physios and rehabilitators are usually good at rehabbing. But generally, we could learn a little bit from the other side of that coin more often than not. And yeah, I'm just really happy with how this episode turned out. I was coaching this morning. I had a tennis player in this morning, going through strength and power, and I was driving home to come back and record this with David today. And down my road, I kind of spoke about this in terms of the podcast, how trying to find a soundproofed room in this house is really, really difficult because the windows seem to be super thin. I live on a school road, so you get, loads of traffic, you get kids coming out of school, screaming, all that stuff. But honestly, there was somebody strimming the garden. There was somebody's car alarm was going off for the past 10 minutes before David hopped on the call. I was fully just expecting a mariachi band to come out of somebody's house and just, start playing outside my window or something. Because I thought this was going to be a big nightmare in terms of sound quality, but it was good. It worked out well. So anyway, rambling from me there. So let's get into the podcast. Hope you enjoy it. Let me know your thoughts. As always, thank you very much. Yes, David, how's it going, mate? Welcome to the episode.
Thank you, Jordan. Good to be here, man. I appreciate you having me on.
No, absolutely. It was a no-brainer. I think just to give you a little bit of flowers initially to start us off. I think the reason I've got this podcast in the first place is I saw how well yours were going and some of the tips you were putting out there. So I thought, let's get him on. Let's see the wizardry he can kind of pass on to me. So.
Yeah, don't judge from looking in. The podcast is going okay. I don't know what defines success on the podcast at the moment because I'm quite new to it. So I'm just kind of, just doing what I enjoy, I suppose. So is it going well or not? I don't know, but I'm having fun with it.
I suppose that's I guess it's the feedback and stuff. I've definitely looked at all the metrics and it's super hard to see what actually goes well and what doesn't. I haven't figured that out yet. Because really, what is it? You get retention. That seems to be a big one. And you don't have an advert in yours, do you? You don't put
we just advertise our own stuff. That's it.
Yeah. So I advertise my own stuff and I have it the middle point pretty much. And you can just see the retention. It's like steady drop. Oh, everyone knows. Yeah. So I'm going to try and sneak up on people soon. I think that's the way I'm going to go about it.
So does that mean that when it drops, that means that it's not that they've skipped through it. It's that they've maybe turned off. Some people have turned off the episode then.
No, so you can see it's like a bridge. It's like a sudden gap and then they rejoin after that point. So it's, I was, yeah, I don't know. I need to figure this out. It's definitely not easy.
Yeah. I just have is that a pre-recorded thing you put in?
That one is a pre-recorded at the moment.
Yeah.
And I guess what I've kind of noticed from yours is it's more kind of organic chat, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I just say, oh, I could be talking about anything. I'm just like, oh, go and buy this thing. And then I just keep going. So I think people can never preempt it. I don't know.
That's what I'm going to do, mate. I think I'll give it a go. So what I want to kind of kick off with, mate, is tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little bit about David Gray. Like I stumbled across your Instagram probably mid-COVID. And I guess, you know, just from my interpretation of it, that is when you kind of not blew up, but that's where you were really kind of gaining a lot of momentum in the social media world. So tell me a little bit about you, mate. Like, who are you? What have you done? Why are you here?
Yeah, good question. That's the hard one. So I suppose I was kind of a frustrated athlete for a long time, like many people in the industry. Tried to play like Gaelic football and hurling, mostly Gaelic football, to a relatively high standard, but I kept getting injured and it was very frustrating for me. And I went around, like I was very invested in trying to get better, number one, like at the sport itself, and then trying to get my body better, because I had seen some, I suppose, gains when I was probably around 18 or 19 in the gym. I wasn't the most natural athlete. I was relatively not super skillful, but like did the basics quite well. And then I saw some gains in the gym that like showed me, okay, actually you can improve here. And then I started practicing my skills quite heavily, and I saw like improvements very quickly doing that stuff. So I had a mindset of like, okay, actually there is things that you can do to improve at different things, which sounds obvious, but then a lot of athletes or people just don't have that mindset. So I just kept getting injured, and I was kind of trying to find ways to help myself along the way. And my injuries got so bad that I kind of had to give up the sport ish. And because I was just ruining my life. Like I couldn't go for a walk. I was in pain I was taking painkillers basically every day for about 2 years just to try and continue playing and stuff. Quite stubborn with it. Saw like some of the supposed best physios and different people in the world. And looking back, I knew then the advice was often very, very poor. And now I look back and I realized it was probably even worse most of the time than I thought then. There was probably some good advice that maybe I didn't listen to along the way, but the vast majority of it was dog crap. So I kind of tried to go down that route a little bit myself. And I went a little bit of an arseways way about it, where I kind of went to like did a lot of courses and CPDs and stuff like that, just to try and help myself. And it turned out I learned a lot and had quite a decent eye for movement, I think. And then I had to come back and some people started asking me for help and stuff, and I was just kind of helping my friends with different things, and I kind of had to come back and do some courses and stuff like that, so I actually had the ability to put hands on people and things. So I went and did some some shortcuts. Like I went and did like a neuromuscular physical therapy course, so not quite a physiotherapy course, some training certs and stuff like that, so that like I could prescribe movement, I could put hands on people, I can do stuff on the table, whatever I wanted. And yeah, I suppose during probably 4 or 5 years ago now, I probably started to share some stuff on Instagram, not much, a little bit of my own training and stuff back then kind of I started to share a little bit with some clients I was working with. Then during COVID, I kind of took it a little bit more seriously, because I was working with a lot of online clients at that stage, because I use movement. Almost 100% of my work is movement, not manual therapy. It just allowed me to work with people online, so do online sessions. And then I just released a couple of programs, and that's probably where we got some traction, because I think a lot of people valued the stuff that I was putting on Instagram, and like so some people definitely didn't value it, but some people did. And like the explanations and the different things I was shown. But then when I released programs, it gave them a chance to actually try stuff more and feel it. And that's where stuff kind of, it did take off, but not in any like real virality kind of way where, you know, you see some people going from 1,000 followers to 60,000 followers with one post. That's never happened to us, to be honest. It's been just steady. The numbers are almost so predictable, regardless of what I do, which is in one way frustrating, but in another way, it's like, it's probably a good thing as well.
It's consistent.
Yeah, we know the formula behind it, like, and for the most part, it's just been growth as a result of like helping people get results. And yeah, now the work has been done and used by athletes and coaches in pretty much every major sport around the world. And yeah, it's been pretty good. So I suppose that's kind of takes me to where I am now, which is a strange kind of place, sometimes confusing, but kind of enjoying it all the same.
Is this where you thought you'd be? Like, is this kind of, I guess, when you first got on this journey of like doing courses and things like that, is this kind of a vision you had, or was just like, yeah, I'm just going to roll with it and see where we end up?
Bit of both. Like I remember being at them courses and stuff and looking at the teachers and thinking I would love to teach, because I like helping people understand things, especially when it comes to movement. So I definitely always like did want to teach. That was a big thing. Like, but it was never like where I was trying to push myself in that direction. It just kind of happened organically, but I knew that was what I would like to do. It probably just happened maybe a little bit quicker than I expected, but I've never taught that I'm not very comfortable teaching. I don't think very, like, you know, super comfortable teaching. And not that I know everything, but I'm pretty confident in the things that I think I know. But at the same time, I'm not afraid to like just throw it in the bin and change my mind. Hopefully, I reserve the right to be wrong, and I have been wrong about a lot of things, but I try and just audit that a little bit if I can. And I think that's what I've no, like, I try not to have too strongly held beliefs about anything, and that allows me to have a little bit of comfort in the things that I'm teaching, because I could turn around a week later and say, it doesn't happen too often that I have a big massive turn, like, but I could turn around and actually say, you know, I was wrong about that. I actually feel like it was this now. So that gives me a little bit of comfort in what I'm teaching, I suppose.
Yeah, it's cool to see. Like, I probably similar to yourself, I love seeing success stories. I love seeing people doing well, you know, same as with athletes. And I think the thing that I really enjoy around, you know, your social media, the way you seem to be doing things and the way you kind of put yourself across, is it seems super authentic. You know, it just seems like you know, for good or bad, it's you. This is who you are. Mm-hmm. And I really like that. I think it kind of goes against what you hear people are like on social media, you know, like, oh, he's got this great, you know, Instagram avatar, but he's an absolute knobhead behind the scenes. It doesn't say, it might be. Maybe I've got your number, mate.
Yeah, you probably do. Now I just share like, not much of my content is super curated. Like, I just, for the last several years, if I'm doing something with a client, I might just put it up on Instagram. Here you go. There's actually very, 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 a little bit more now. There's very few people, especially in the more rehab-y world, that were actually showing what they were doing with clients. Now, some of that is because of disclaimers and stuff like that. You don't want to be filming people who are blah, 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 blah. But like, you know, it depends on the person. But like, for instance, there's an ACL rehab that I'm doing with a guy there now, and people can go on my Instagram and pretty much piece the puzzle together and pretty much see every single thing that we've done, or close to everything that we've done. And that leaves you open to like shots being fired at you and saying, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? But at the end of the day, it's up there. I'm not faking anything. I'm not talking about something on Instagram that I'm not actually using with a client. I know someone who's like teaches courses and has a big fancy curriculum. And guess what they actually do in clinic? They just dry needle people. And it's all this fancy curriculum. Like, but whatever I talk about, I put up pictures, or if it's just my life. And I think people could benefit from doing a little bit more of that type of thing. And we have had a lot of people that like have literally copy and pasted our content and used it on their own social media, and it doesn't get any traction because it's not them, like, you know. So it just doesn't. It's Instagram and social media is about not just the information, but it's about authenticity, like you're saying, entertainment. All these things come together, and people can realize when you're not actually being yourself very, very quickly, I think.
Yeah, I agree, mate. Tell me about, so you said around like shots fired then. Is that something you've had a lot of experience with, like the troll mentality? Is that something that's kind of got you, or you've been relatively okay?
Not really, not too much. A little bit here and there, but very, very little, I would say. More probably people just talk behind your back where they're saying like this is bullshit or whatever, but not too many. No, not too many. I stay away from it as well because I don't go trying to fire shots at people or anything like that. Yeah. I pretty much just focus on what we're doing and try and like put up stuff that I think here's what I'm going to say. I'm not trying to tear anyone else down to build us up. So I think the more you do that, the more you're going to get people coming back at you. So we don't do too much of that. I try not to get into the negativity side of it or look at the meme stuff too much, where although I do enjoy some of them, but I don't try and get into that too much. Not because I don't think it, like some of those people that are doing that are providing value just in a different way, which is using memes to get a message across. But the negativity just gets to me a little bit. Like my personality, I just try and it just doesn't sit right with me. It just bugs me a little bit. It would be in the back of my mind that I'm doing this. So I try and be as positive as I can because that just is better for my life and my lifestyle, I think.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think there seems to be multiple ways of kind of running an online business and building traction behind what you're saying. And, you know, I know you know Keir, and he's one of those guys. He loves to steer the shit, you know, and he knows what he's getting from it. He's not just doing it to be malicious. He's doing it for a reason, you know, same as James Smith, you know, like he does the same. And I think he calls it literally a shit sieve. You know, he will just stir it up and then he'll scoop in. Okay, I've got my audience there. Yeah. But I think I'm similar to you, mate. I don't feel like I have the stones behind me to kind of do it. Yeah. If you get what I mean.
That's they're being authentic there. They're like, you know, that's their personality a little bit. They are just fucking taking the piss and having fun with it. And it's just not as much me. And I respect them. I think it's good. I think the issue comes when people start trying to do that stuff when they're not able for it. And then it's not them again. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't land. You can just taste it. It's not quite right. It doesn't taste right. So
Yeah, no, that's fair. Tell me about your podcast, mate. What kind of inspired you to get into this realm then? Why are you here?
I've done a lot of guest podcasts, and I think a lot less recently, but I think at one stage I was being invited on quite a bit, and a lot of the questions were the same. People were just like, tell me about breathing, tell me about pronation, and the questions were just felt like I'd answered these questions already, but fair enough, at the same time you haven't answered them for that audience. So I understood that, but I was like, okay, maybe I can start a podcast that I can just answer, or I can just delve into topics that I want to delve into a little bit more. So that was kind of one reason. The other reason is I think we have very little longer form content available for free. So we have a lot of short-term content available for free. Then in our membership site, we have more longer form content available for free. But the issue with Instagram is I put up a post today and in a few days' time, it's gone forever, basically. It's just no one's going to scroll down and see that anymore. So I think for someone to be able to come into our world and actually want to get to know like what we do and all that stuff a little bit more, then there needs to be more for them, and they can go onto the podcast. And now, like, within, I think we're on episode 32 or something like that. So there's 32 episodes. They don't have to listen to them all, but they might flick through. And suddenly within a week, they've listened to 7 episodes. That's like maybe 7 hours of content from us, and they know us a lot more. And now they're in a much better place to make a decision. Okay, do I actually want to move on and buy some stuff here or whatever? And even if they never do, that's fine. But like, they get a chance to to make that decision with a little bit more longer form content that's a bit more evergreen. And the third reason, I suppose, was I think I'm quite bullish on podcasting. I listen to podcasts. I like podcasts. I really enjoy them because I go for walks and I pop in a podcast. And I feel like it's a medium that's going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I don't think it's hit. A lot of people think they're like really late to podcasting. There's so many podcasts. Should I bother even doing one? I would say like the answer is if you want to do one and you feel like you have something to offer, then yes, it doesn't matter how many other podcasts are there. So I'm quite bullish on that. And I feel like you could build something quite good and something that you're proud of doing that. And then the last reason is I wanted to talk to people that I thought were cool and get guests on. And that's what I've done. And for instance, today we just released, like I said to you there a few minutes ago, a episode with Dwayne Chambers, British Olympian sprinter. And I was walking on air after that podcast, after that episode. I went after that, like he just talked about his career, his doping ban, the race with Usain Bolt in Berlin in 2009 when Usain Bolt set the world record that still stands. Like Dwayne was in that race. He talked about all the things that happen before a race when they're warming up and in the chill room with the other athletes and all this stuff. And the smile on my face through that whole episode. And I left that episode. I was like, that was a fucking privilege for me to sit there and talk to him. It was honestly, I try to be grateful, like, but I'm not overly, I just kind of, things are bad or good. I tried to stay pretty middling all the time. And I was just walked away from that. I was like, that was just insane that I was able to do that there. And I just really, not even in a fanboy or girl type of way, it was just like, I just really enjoyed that. And I've enjoyed lots of the episodes that we've done. And I suppose the final reason is that I have a little bit of a platform. Some people have way more of a platform, others have a bit smaller. It doesn't matter. I just have a bit of a platform, and I wanted to have an unselfish way of just bringing people that I respect onto my platform and exposing some of my audience to those people and their ideas. I feel that's important, and I want to give back in that way. So that was probably a long answer around the podcast.
No, mate, it's good. It's good. I think one of the things I'm super curious of around that is like Dwayne Chambers, like how have you gone about, do you know him personally? Does he live next door to you? Or have you have you hunted that, have you kind of put yourself in a situation where you can get these great guests on?
I don't live next door to him. I was going to say I bet him in a race or something, but I didn't. No, he asked me to help him rehab his Achilles, and then I just did a little bit of work on it with him, and he I just said to him, will you come on my podcast? I just took the chance. I was like, will you come on? And he said, yeah. And he's a super nice guy. And honestly, this is the one podcast where I'm saying, like, I think everyone should listen, regardless of if you're not into sprinting that much. Someone who was ridiculed and was massively down, and the media was all over him for years and years and years. And like the outlook he has on life and stuff now is just so good. So it was just basically helping him out and asking him. That was it. Yeah.
Seems simple. I'm going to try it, mate. I'm just going to go with that from now on. I guess it is one of those things, isn't it? Behind the scenes, I can see how it would get really, you could get really insecure around asking somebody that potentially has a bigger following, who is smarter and all those things. And I think sometimes you will get knocked back. Sometimes you will get a scene. I don't know if you've ever had any of those yet, where people have just been like, you know what, it's not for me. Mm-hmm. But I've had some, and I'm just kind of throwing them out there. I'm still really early on, but you got to try it, right? Got to try it and see where it goes.
The only way to look at it is, if you don't ask them, you're not going to be on your podcast anyway. And if you ask them, they might be on your podcast. And if they say no, they're still not on your podcast. So you haven't lost anything really. You can just be tactical about it, where you start to get some like big names, but then again, like the big names are, depending on what world they're in, all the different names are different. So they might not recognize some or whatever. So like a couple of guests that I've had on, most of the guests I've had on, I actually just know, or we've done something, or there's been some kind of connection there. Most people that you email or write to will probably come on most people will, I would say 70% of people will just come on and give you an hour of their time or whatever. And yeah, you can just say, a couple of people I wrote to, just sent them an email and was like, these are the 5 guests that have been on, like, that I knew they'd probably know their names, and would you like to come on? And here's how many listens the podcast get. And yeah, they said no problem.
Man, that's cool. It's good to hear. I want to take you back to, you said something around the Instagram, like you're right, it's not evergreen, it cycles down, and once you get to 12 posts, 16 posts, whatever it is, it's gone. I personally have started doing this a little bit, and I don't know whether it's received kind of snidely or not. It's just recycling. Some of the stuff that I feel like is worth repeating for the people that we know what Instagram's like. Only 10% of your following may actually see that stuff. Like, is that something you ever intend to do, have done, or are you just not that bothered?
I actually haven't done a lot of it. I have done some. I haven't done a lot, because some of my older content, when I look back now, is a bit shitty. And so I have said the same message several times, like where I explain something maybe in a slightly different way. But I feel like now we're starting to produce some content that is a bit better and looks a bit better. And if Instagram Reels are still around in 12 months' time, I will definitely be able to use a lot of the content that I've put up over the last month and stuff like that. And I will definitely do that. But yeah, I think especially now it's tricky to just recycle it or just use what you've done in the past, because most of them posts aren't going to land very, very well now, because it's just gone to so much real content.
Yeah, no, I get that. How's your reel journey going? I listened to the episode with Matt the other day. How's that going? Well,
it's going pretty well. It's going okay. There's like, I have like a conflicting battle with myself, where in one way I've all the time I've just done what I wanted to do, and that has worked. Worked is like whether I could be way bigger and have made way more money and had much bigger impact. Maybe I could have if I did things smarter. So I don't know if it actually has worked or if it has held me back. But whatever I've done has worked to a certain degree, by just being like, I'm just going to put up whatever I want in whatever format I want. But Instagram has made that very difficult at the moment. It's just like your views just go through the floor if you're not doing reels in a certain way. So I've started to try and do that, and it's going okay. It's hitting a little bit, but even still, like the time that I'm putting into posts now, like it could be an hour that I put into a post or an hour and a half. It's still not getting as many views as stuff that it took me 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's the thing.
A year ago.
It's infuriating.
Yeah.
So. It fully rattles me, that. And I think one of the things, I don't know if this is actually a genuine thing. I don't want it to be a full, a podcast around social media, but when you put links in your story, that seems to be a surefire way to cut my story views. I don't know if that's the same for you.
Yeah, they don't want you putting in links, basically, because you're driving people away from Instagram. So that's what's going on there. Yeah. But at the same time, they have the links feature. So you kind of you need to sell like on stories and drive people elsewhere to get them off the platform, because you don't own Instagram, and sooner or later it's going to bite you in the ass if you only have an Instagram following and not an email list and all this other stuff. So so you need to use links, but you need to be sparing enough with them. But I don't know, I don't know how much you can use them and how little you can. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they're not giving away the blueprint, are they? Not really.
No.
Hi guys, I'm just going to take a brief break in today's podcast to talk to you about the Adapt online strength and conditioning coaching service. At Adapt, we put the athlete first and make sure that the whole program is set up around them, their goals, their sport, and their lifestyle to achieve the best possible performances. Our aim is to deliver an elite level coaching experience that typically isn't always commercially available if not part of a professional club or performance pathway system. We communicate with our athletes on a weekly and sometimes daily basis, making changes in technique and making alterations to the program based on how you're performing on any given day. We also bring in experts from psychologists, nutritionists and physiotherapists for online educational workshops to make sure we are giving you all the tools necessary to excel in your sport. So if you're looking to take your physicality to the next level and want to invest in yourself, head over to the website at adaptstrength.co.uk for more information, including some success stories of our current athletes, or drop me a message to set up a chat to discuss the options. Hope you're enjoying today's podcast, so let's get back to it. So I want to dig into some theory stuff, actually, mate. Like, I'd kind of say you're up there as one of the people that's bringing stuff around the rib cage and, you know, actually trying to educate people. And I would say it's becoming quite mainstream. Like, it's actually readily available information now, whereas I feel like back in the day, 2 years ago, nobody was really speaking about this, at least in the areas where I were. So talk to me a little bit about upper body basics and what the thought process was behind that, because there was a really good statement I saw you put on one of your adverts, and it was distal strength for proximal stability. Have I butchered that? Is that right?
You've definitely butchered that.
Have I butchered it? Have I got
Definitely.
Correct me.
I don't know what I put there, but it wasn't that. It was more likely to be distal build strength and intermuscular coordination distally for proximal mobility, not stability, which is typically people talk about distal. What would people say? Distal mobility and proximal stability, which really
joint by joint.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense at all. Firstly, like, we need movement. Where there's joints, we need movement. We don't want stability is a bit of a funny word. I have a wrestling match all the time with it because I don't really like it, but still I can use it because it's a word that people use. So, like, at the end of the day, where there's joints, where we see joints, there should be movement. So a lot of people, if they go through that joint by joint approach, they'll say, okay, the ankle should be stable. No, the ankle should be mobile. The knee should be stable. The hip should be mobile. I just don't know what that even means, really, because a lot of people, like, in what plane of motion? So I see a lot of people with knee joint that has an inability to, like, they can't actually stabilize the knee joint very, very well, right? So when we come into that mid stance in a walking or running position, there is these co-contractions around the knee joint, which you could use the term help to stabilize the knee joint there. But also I see people with a shin that is, like, locked a lot into maybe external rotation, and it can't flex very well and it can't extend very well. So they kind of stay in this little bit of a mid-range position, and they might need more stability, for instance, if you wanted to use that word, in the sagittal plane, but they might need more mobility in the transverse plane. So they might need some internal rotation at the tibia or something like this. So I just the joint by joint approach just doesn't make sense. Likewise, if you went through the joint by joint approach from the hip down, I think it was like Mike Boyle and Dan John who came up with this kind of thing. I think it was. So if you talk about the hip, right? So they're going to say the hip should be mobile. Hard to argue with that, but also, like, it should be stable at certain points. So, like, when should it be? Or, like, there should be isometric contractions around that hip at a certain point. So then you go to the knee, they'll say the knee should be stable. Then you go to the ankle, they say it should be mobile. But they never did they categorize the foot, because there's 33 joints in the foot, and it needs to be stable when we are going to strike. It needs to be mobile when we're on the floor. And then it needs to be stable again, or rigid again when we go to push off, because we need to push off on a rigid lever of a foot, a more supinated foot. So the other way of going stable, mobile, stable with the foot is supination, pronation, supination, or external rotation. You could say is more that stable position. Internal rotation might be more of that mobile position, and then external rotation, that supination again. So, like, people are just throwing out things like this: stable, mobile, stable, or whatever. It just doesn't make sense. You need movement where you need it. You need more movement where you need more movement. And sometimes maybe you need less movement where you need less movement. That's it. And that applies to every single joint in the body, not this one or the other. But when I talked about upper body basics, and it's the same with lower body as well, a lot of people are trying to, like, brace around the spine or a lot of people actually, their spine doesn't move very well in the first place. Their ribs are quite locked up. Their pelvis is quite locked up. So if we just said rib cage and pelvis are more proximal to the hand and the foot, for instance, if your brain senses an inability to manage the forces coming into your body, it's probably easier using the foot. So my foot is going to hit the floor when I'm sprinting. If my brain senses that, like, I have an inability, or my nervous system, more likely, it's not just a brain thing, has an inability to manage those forces coming in through the foot, through the lower limb or the lower leg, and the whole lower limb, then it's going to brace and lock up more proximally around the spine, because it needs to protect them proximal structures. So a good way of getting more mobility proximally, allowing those ribs and the pelvis and the spine to actually move more freely, is actually to give the nervous system and the body an ability to manage the forces coming into the body distally. Another way of looking at it is, if a rugby player was coming to smash into me, I have the ball, I want to hand them off. If I'm going to hand them off and I can't create a little bit of stiffness distally, so around the wrist, that needs to be nice and stiff if I'm going to hand them off in the chest. If my wrist, if I go to push into them, 120 kilo rugby player, and my wrist isn't stiff, if it just folds into extension or flexion, like, I'm going to break my wrist, or I'm going to break my elbow, or I'm going to bust my shoulder. So I need to have this stiffness distally, and that is what keeps my proximal structures more safe. If I hit that rugby player in the chest, my wrist folds, my elbow folds, and my shoulder folds, then all that force is coming straight into my spine as well. So that's a little bit of an issue. So I think a good way of getting people to release these co-contractions proximally around the spine, the pelvis, and the rib cage is to get a little bit more distal strength and coordination. And a lot of that comes with the intermuscular coordination with regards to before the foot hits the floor, there's pre-tensioning and stuff like that. For people who can't pre-tension their limb very well, they're going to struggle with performance and actually keeping their joints safe, because it's just, when your foot hits the floor, if you're coming off a box jump, or a drop jump, or you're sprinting or something like that, if you have to wait for your foot to hit the floor for your muscles to build tension, it's too late, and you're going to end up with a lot of force coming up into things like shins and knees and hips and a spine and stuff like that. So some of it is strength, but a lot of this is coordination that we're talking about. So hopefully that all made sense and wasn't too long and ranty.
No, that's solid, mate. I've definitely heard more around that in terms of, the ankle, knee, hip, in terms of pre-tensioning and building that solid structure so that you can essentially protect what's most distal to you. But I guess your content and all the stuff you've been putting out was the first time I'd really heard it explained for the upper limb, and everything in the upper body. Is this something, because obviously I'm getting it straight from you, but is this something that's actually being discussed in the rehab world more so, or have you just kind of been the person that's brought it to the forefront?
No, I haven't. Like, it's definitely been discussed, I suppose. I haven't been the one. I just talk about it a little bit, and it's less relevant for the upper limb unless you're like a contact sport athlete, or maybe like a rock climber or someone like that. If you're just a runner, then I probably wouldn't be interested in it too much, because your arms are just swinging. They're not coming in contact with a wall or a floor or another body. So it's much more relevant for them contact sport athletes. What was the question? Where does it come from? I suppose it's come from our anatomy, really. If you look at the anatomy, where, like, if you look at the Achilles tendon and then you look at some of the tendons in your forearms, they're very similar. They're these long, thin tendons, and they're designed to kind of transfer energy around the body. And so we don't have like these big massive muscles around our wrists and stuff like that. So we have to be able to deal with forces in some way. And this is where a lot of the co-contractions and stuff come from. So it just makes sense. If you look at any rehab for rugby players or any of them contact sport athletes, a lot of the physiotherapists will have like a plyo push-up, or there will be rehab where they're like, they are actually going into contact. Like that would be a big part of shoulder rehab, where they're slowly introducing this contact or this just kind of pushing against the wall or the floor or things like that. Dave O'Sullivan, who's a physio in England, he's actually been with England Rugby. He uses a ton of that type of stuff. I don't use that much, but I don't work with as many rugby players as he probably does. But I can see, like, if you have a rugby player with an elbow or a shoulder issue or a neck issue or an upper back issue, like, you definitely want to make sure that they're very strong and very stable, if you wanted to use that word, and able to create that stiffness through the upper limb. And usually I think people think about it the other way around. They're trying to brace through the spine and then give like mobility around the distal structures. I think there's a big value in thinking about it the other way around, where actually I can build strength distally and teach people how to brace and get co-contractions distally and actually get a lot more mobility through my upper back and the scaps and all that stuff, rather than pinning everything together back there.
Do you feel like the people that are using, you know, the upper body basics, lower body basics, do they struggle a lot more with the upper body side in terms of the coordination and all those things? Because generally it's not as readily available, or not really?
Good question. I think people in upper body basics, we put a massive emphasis on like freeing up that upper back. I think one of the worst cues in the gym world that was ever like pushed into the mainstream was shoulders back and down for everything, right? So it just completely locks people into place. People are starting to understand now how like a stack can be important. You'll see a lot of sprint coaches talking about it, like how you want this alignment of the rib cage over the pelvis. They call it sprinting posture or athletic posture. So for like athletes in general, it is important. The more and more, it's not that like an anterior tilt is bad or anything like that, but when you see people who just are super flared at the ribs and have no control over the pelvis, most of the best sprint coaches in the world will try and take care of that, and they'll talk about sprinting posture. There's research starting to come out around hamstring injuries and anterior pelvic tilt. I think we'll get there. I think that will become a lot more prominent and obvious over the next few years with the research, that is an important thing. And yet when we go into the gym, if we're rehabbing a hamstring, we do Nordic curls, pin your shoulder blades down and back. We do RDLs, pin your shoulder blades down and back. We do even on a supine or a prone hamstring curl machine, people will have their ass up in the air as high as they can. They do sliders, their pelvis is done forward. They do back squats, they do their rows, they do their bench press. Everything is done like that. And it is pushing them ribs up and forward and pushing that pelvis down and forward. And basically the whole back of the body gets very, very limited. So it doesn't matter if you're talking about upper body or lower body. You're going to, whatever reaction you cause at the rib cage, you're going to cause the exact opposite reaction at the pelvis. So ribs come up and forward, pelvis goes down and forward. So I'm a fan of just getting things moving a little bit and opening up that upper back. And I think that can do really good things for the ribs and the pelvis. I think some of the lower body stuff makes a little bit more sense to people a little bit quicker, because they can feel like their hamstrings and their feet and their calves and stuff working. Whereas with the upper body, we're just putting a little bit more emphasis into getting that expansion in the upper back, opening up, getting the shoulder blades moving and gliding around the rib cage. And that's almost the opposite of what a lot of people have been told. So it just maybe takes a bit of time and a bit of work to break down some of those barriers that have been created by people just basically locking people into place so much.
It's true what you say, mate, around the shoulder blade posture. I can literally remember, and I'm telling you too much here. I'm going to treat you like my therapist. You're going to get it all. I can remember being in school. And one of the PE teachers, who was a little bit rough around the edges, but told me off because my posture was a little bit shit, forward. And he was just like, right, pin your shoulders back. And I honestly think that I probably maintained that for the next 10 years. Like, if I ever caught myself not here, it was like an issue. And I also get a lot of lower back pain. I've also got that anterior tilt most of the time. So I think it's super interesting. I think weights are important in that sense.
100%. Yeah, 100%. You see, like, especially in the pain world, you see people talk about posture And you'll see a client come in and sit in front of you, and they are sitting bolt upright with their shoulder blades pinned back because some physio told them you need to sit in this posture, or some coach told them, like, at no stage during the day should you not be sitting in this posture. You should never slouch. Like, rounding your back is bad for you. And it just doesn't make sense. If you pin your shoulder blades back like that, drive your chest up in the air and sit there for a minute, you're just going to feel how much tension you've increased in your entire body. Just let it go, let it go, let it go. So there needs to be movement in the body, and we need to be able to relax, I think, and that's important. My girlfriend, actually, sorry, my wife now, Kira, she did a personal trainer course a few years ago, probably 4 years ago or something, and she came home, and the people that were teaching in that course had them all stand up and pin their shoulder blades back and stick their chest up in the air, and he timed them for 2 minutes. And these were all trainers who were being trained to train other clients, and timed them for 2 minutes and hold that position, and went around and corrected them all. And this was the thing he said: you need to practice this every hour of the day to stand in this position, so that your body learns it and holds there. And then in every session you ever do with a client, time them for 30 seconds to 2 minutes and make sure they're holding that position. It's literally the stupidest thing I have ever heard, but that's an extreme example, but this is what's going on with people. Like, every gym session that you see, these are the cues: chest up, shoulder blades down and back, and they initiate their rows with that. Like, a lot of people are rowing where they pull the scap back and down first, rather than just moving their arm and letting the scap do what it needs to do. So much excessive cues and tension being created in people's bodies from a misunderstanding and a misapplication of anatomy and biomechanics.
Mate, that story fucks me off. Like, that really annoys me. Like, and I see it all the time. Like, I work in a lot of different gyms at the moment. I kind of move around a little bit, and just seeing personal trainers, gym instructors, physios, like, it's not just one profession, but just incompetence. And I hate it, because if I was going to send my mum to a PT, I'd hate the thought that my mum is going to be in their hands, and I think some things might not directly be damaging, it might be a long lasting thing that just builds up over time, but it grinds my gears. And I don't think it'll necessarily change in a heartbeat either.
No, I don't think so either.
So talk to me around the hamstring stuff, mate. You just mentioned around anterior pelvic tilt potentially being, putting a little bit more stretch on the hamstrings and those types of things. So how would you go about rehabbing like a hamstring then? Are you going to treat it more holistically? Is that where you're kind of getting at?
Yeah, I treat it holistically. Like, I treat everything holistically. I've never seen a hamstring walking or running down the street on its own. Same with a foot, same with a knee. I spoke to Jonas Dodu, who's probably one of the world's best sprint coaches, I think. He's definitely up there. He was on my podcast, and he spoke about his sprinters, how very rarely do they have like a weak hamstring, and very rarely would he put it down. Like, you can't put any injury down to one thing, I don't think. But he said, I very rarely would put a hamstring injury for one of my sprinters down to the hamstring itself. And he said how much they actually go after the pelvis. And even from like day one of the hamstring injury, after the hamstring injury, like, they're doing pelvic drills straight away. They're trying to keep this. I think the word he used was keep the pelvis alive. So just don't let it like freeze and stuff like that. So I put a massive emphasis on I don't want people to think like we're just doing pelvis stuff. Like, the hamstring work that I do smokes people. We make them very, very strong. I do a lot of isometric hamstring work. I do a lot of eccentrics. I do a lot of concentrics. We do a lot of like hopping work where we have control over the pelvis. But in basically all my hamstring drills, I'm looking for some amount of attention to detail to be placed around the pelvis, not just let it sloppily fly wherever it wants. I'm not too enamored with Nordboard scores and stuff like that, because if you actually look at how these people are doing Nordics, I've rehabbed a lot of very, very, very good athletes, world-class athletes, elite athletes, sub-elite athletes. A lot of them have the best Nordboard scores in their team or their organization, and yet they still keep tearing their hamstring. So those two things just don't add up. And then you actually look at how they're doing their Nordics, and they're in so much extension through the spine, so much anterior pelvic tilt, that you're actually wondering, is this a hamstring exercise at all? Their back extensors are working so hard. And so we are getting some stimulus through the hamstrings when we do it in that way. But we have to wonder, there's also maybe a negative transfer here, because they're making their back extensors so strong, and they are, like it or not, you are ingraining a pattern into people when you stress them that hard. Like, the nervous system is going to start to adapt in that direction. So we know that like anterior pelvic tilt and a poor control over the hamstring has some kind of link to hamstring injuries, right? I'm not saying it's everything, some kind of link to hamstring injuries. And yet we do our exercises where we actually exacerbate that problem. We make people worse. We push them way further into that position. And then we're strengthening our hamstrings, but actually making the thing that maybe is causing or having a big impact on the hamstring injuries, we're making that worse. So I think so in some ways we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. So I just like to do it's not that I want a tucked pelvis or anything like that, just a more neutral pelvis, or a little bit more attention paid to what the pelvis is actually doing. And that's just, people argue with that, but it shouldn't be that much of a reach to think about, like, just, okay, maybe control your pelvis a little bit when you're doing these exercises. And yeah, so just a mix of like postural control, ribs and pelvis, hamstring exercises where we get people very, very strong. And then also maybe like opening up the hips a little bit sometimes, where you just see people are just really compressed. They have very little movement around the hips, and so they're always being pushed forward or whatever. And then a little bit of a focus on running mechanics, like swing leg retraction, all this stuff, so that the leg is just not swinging out in front all of the time. There's actually some kind of coming back and down towards the floor, different things like that. It doesn't look probably that much different to what a lot of people are doing. It's just trying to bring up all these qualities rather than just putting all my eggs in the strength basket, I think.
Absolutely. I think that's awesome, mate. I think the fact that you're speaking around these things is great. And one of the things I saw the other day was around, I'm going to butcher the statistic here, but it was an NFL statistic around preseason. And it was something like 50% of the injuries that happened in the total season happened in preseason. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow, like what's happened here? What's been the cause? And no doubt probably just a training load thing. I think the actual study may have been after COVID as well. So there's probably a lot of different things that are going into that. Yeah.
It's low, like load is just through the roof there. You see it in every sport preseason. If you can survive, if you can just stress people enough in preseason, which is very difficult to do, because you don't want to leave them under-trained coming into the season, obviously, but I think people probably just try and think that they can achieve so much in a 2 or 3 week spell, which they just can't, and they just need to back off a little bit and then try and bring up some qualities or maintain some qualities throughout the season, rather than just throwing the kitchen sink at it and actually injuring athletes. And if an athlete gets injured in preseason, I don't know the exact stat, but they're way, way, way more likely to get injured again during the season. So I just like to be a little bit more, not cautious, I'm quite aggressive with things, but like you just see a lot of injuries that are very unnecessary, I think.
Avoidable. Yeah. I think I work in rugby a fair bit. I've got a few rugby athletes that I take care of. So I'm in, pretty good contact with the head coaches of those different clubs. And, speaking through preseason at the moment, we're approaching that time and, trying to get some idea of, okay, what the boys can be doing, so I can try and build them towards that point. And I've had some, honestly, mate, like, well, we've got, boxing in the morning, Monday to Friday for rugby. And I'm like, well, where does that fit in? I get it from a cross-training standpoint, but it's not the time. You've gone from 0 to 100 really quick. And that is the worry, isn't it? I think it's coaches sometimes just getting twitchy feet, twitchy fingers, whatever it is. Have I messed that up? I think I butchered that one, haven't I?
No, you're like, I think Kier has probably done the best job on that, like reverse engineering the sport. You see what he's done in NFL. He's changed some of the preseason tests and stuff that they use. And it's just trying to be so clear around what are our KPIs and moving towards that. But that's easy for me to say because I'm not working in I'm not working with a professional club or organization where they have to deal with 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 athletes at a time, and they're trying to just do as much as they can in a short space of time. It's very easy for me to say, but in reality, it's very difficult. But I just do feel like people are a little bit, you see it in Ireland, like in Gaelic football and hurling, just people just don't understand load, volume, and how much you can actually achieve, especially in your gym work, how much you can actually get done with like just doing a bit more, just doing a bit less, but doing it really well. You can actually get so much done.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. One final question for you, mate, and then I'll let you run. So I guess some of the things we think, well, actually, let's take it back a little bit. What would you kind of pigeonhole yourself as? Would you say just rehab specialist, a coach? Are you a physio? Like where would you kind of fall, do you think?
I just rehab people. I just work with people I help people move a bit better and like feel and move a bit better. So there is some elements of like just coaching people who aren't actually injured. I have a little bit of that. I don't do too much of that, but sometimes it's just athletes who I've rehabbed maybe, and then they just want to keep training in that way. So I just kind of say I help people move better, get a bit stronger, usually more towards the field-based stuff or the running stuff, less like I'm not working with too many powerlifters or Olympic lifters or strongmen. They're just not my sports. I just don't understand them that well. I have worked with some like of the world's best powerlifters and stuff where it's just like a few little sessions to clean up a few issues they have, because I don't feel like you need to know the sport that well. You need to just know your anatomy and your biomechanics to help someone get more dorsiflexion that they're just struggling with, or their knee, clean it up or whatever. But like, I'm not working deeply in those sports, and I'm not trying to make people better at those sports. So I just help people move better who are probably struggling a little bit. That's as simple as I like to keep it.
Nice. Cool. So I guess that does build me into the next question then, which is, I guess, when trying to kind of rehab an athlete, and you're kind of more on this rehab spectrum and, trying to return them to play, and eventually there'll be this, in some way, a full handover to the S&C coach. Like, what do you feel like S&C coaches need to know to push that forward? Because there seems to be that spectrum, physio is really good at return to play, but are shy to strength training and exercise prescription and load and all that. And then it's the polar opposite on the other side. Strength coaches just have an appreciation of go, none of the minutia. So what's your thoughts on that? It's a big one.
I think they're meeting in the middle. It's a big one. It's also a simple one. I think the physio side needs to understand load a bit better. And I think the S&C side probably needs to understand like anatomy and biomechanics a bit better. I think that's it. If I had my choice, I would, between like if I had an injury and I needed to I could choose between a poor physio and a good S&C. I'd go to a good S&C all day long because they understand load. And like you can just meet someone where they're at and say, okay, you can't do a calf raise off a step, you can do it off the floor. Like any good S&C can understand that, right? Okay, it's a little bit painful for your Achilles. No, I won't use Achilles because that's a bad example. It's just a little bit painful when you do a squat to 90 degrees, so on your knee, but it's actually fine when we go a bit higher. Okay, I'm going to choose a higher box squat variation. Like, S&Cs understand that, and that's a good way to rehab an injury. I would just like people to be a bit better. Not I would like that sounds a bit pompous. I just think biomechanics is and anatomy is very important, and actually it doesn't make things more complicated or complex. It makes things simpler. You just start to understand a bit easier why someone is struggling with a certain movement, and then it makes your exercise prescription a bit better. So, but that goes for our physios as well. They're quite poor. I think a lot of them are quite poor at that side of things. But this is my bias because that's a lot of what I teach is like anatomy and biomechanics and communicating that in a simple way with your clients. So I'm probably always going to be biased in saying people should be better at that, because that's some of how I make my money. But I still think it's the case.
I agree, mate. I agree. Awesome. Cool. Let's wrap it up, mate. I just want to thank you for your time. That's been absolutely awesome. It's been super informative. And I think it's probably going to give people an idea of what they don't know, so I think you may get a few follows and things like that off my really small following, but you may grab a few loyal guys. So yeah, I just want to thank you, David. You smashed it.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it. And every follower counts, unless they're a troll.
yeah, none of them. No, thank you, mate. Thanks for listening to the Adapt Performance podcast. Let me know what you thought about the episode by leaving a review or sending me a direct message. I'm all for receiving the honest feedback to make sure the episodes grow and get better and better. Like, share, subscribing and following all goes a long way to making sure the podcast reaches the right people. Thanks a lot. Catch you next time.